Last night, though, a new college football playoff ranking, and would you look at that? The season of surprises continues, bordering on the absurd. Your LSU Tigers, led by Jaden Daniels, number 5, now find themselves number 5 in the entire country. You have Georgia, number 1, because of course. You have Ohio State and Michigan at 2 and 3, something that will be settled over this week. And you got TCU at 4 because they remain 11-0 in the top of the Big 12. And then it's not 1-loss Southern Cal. It's not 1-loss Clemson. No, it is 2-loss LSU checking in at number 5. Number 6, USC. Number 7, Alabama. And then number 8, Clemson. So I think there's a few things to break down here. First off, I think the committee knows exactly what it's doing with this LSU and USC ranking. Okay, many people are upset about this. USC has 1 loss, LSU has 2. They have an embarrassing loss when you're talking about getting blown out by Tennessee, and the Florida State loss really isn't anything to write home about, whereas SC's only loss is 1 point on the road in Utah. That is completely fair. The problem is USC doesn't have the toughest schedule. They don't have the best wins right now, and they have an awful defense. However, I do believe that SC's schedule will grow to the point where if they win these final 2 games, that I think that they would potentially leapfrog LSU. Now this is up for debate. Remember, we talked to Andy Staples about this, the thing on Monday, and I raised this exact scenario. Basically, LSU beats Georgia and USC wins out. Does USC leapfrog in? He said no. He thinks LSU beats Georgia and they're in. This playoff committee ranking would maybe speak to that, but I don't hold it in stone that just because you're ahead of a team and you don't lose that you're going to stay ahead of that team. We've seen that go awry in the past. The problem with USC is that their main resume building will started last week, right? Getting the big win over UCLA. It has to continue this week. If they're playing host to Notre Dame, who's been very good and really helping USC in this, is that you have Notre Dame checking in at number 15 in the country. This would be another really good win there if they were able to do that. UCLA down to 18 after losing to SC. And then they would square up with number 9, Oregon. That would be 3 incredibly impressive wins in a row. Now, the LSU-Georgia win would be the nicest. Well, look, we'll have to wait and see. I guess the only thing I'm thinking is that I still don't know that I fully accept that LSU controls their own destiny here as a Southern Cal resume looks to grow. Now, I don't think that the committee believes in USC. Again, they have the clearest weakness. I mean, if you look at this top 5, where are the weaknesses? Georgia, there appear to be none. Georgia's biggest weakness is they don't always bring the same intensity that they have to the biggest matchups of the year this year. But when they have had to lock in, they have been an unstoppable force. They obviously decimate Oregon, decimate Tennessee. Sure, they've played with their food at one time or another, but in an SEC championship setting in which you're going to play them in Atlanta, you're not going to get treated like they treated Mizzou, where they clearly were checked out, didn't come with their head right at all to that game. Georgia's going to be fully focused. So Georgia doesn't have much of a weakness right now. Remember, they didn't even take a single player out of the transfer portal over this offseason. Ohio State's weakness, can't run the ball, which is clear. Like, they struggle in short yardage situations in games like the Northwestern game where throw's not working because of weather. They've been awful at running the ball. The defense is vastly improved. We're going to figure out Saturday if there's still questions about this defense, if it can hold up under the weight of this Michigan offensive line. So Ohio State even's a bit like Georgia, right? If your one weakness is you're not great at running the ball, you're not awful. But if your one weakness is you're not great at running the ball, it shows you're a pretty complete team. And as it should be in rankings, the further you go down the list, the more weaknesses that start to appear. Like for Michigan, they're pretty incredible everywhere. The problem is, compared to Ohio State, they don't have as much NFL talent, especially not the skill positions, but more so than that, the quarterback position. Look, Jim Harbaugh has done a very good job of putting J.J. McCarthy in easy situations. easy throws, not a lot of decisions that need to be made. He's done a really good job of, over the years, building this offense kind of in the philosophy and the style that he wants, and J.J. McCarthy runs that offense. But it is a limited offense, right? And it's tough when you're talking about the playoffs. You're talking about trying to beat the best teams in the country. You're talking about beating Ohio State. I don't know that there's a tougher thing to overcome than being limited at quarterback. Because you saw last week against Illinois. When Blake Corum went down and that run game started to struggle a little bit, if you put the ball and put the game in J.J. McCarthy's hands, you will be in trouble. As far as TCU goes, TCU's weakness would maybe just be it feels like they're playing over their head constantly. Now, they also have they score highest in the trait that I like most on teams, in that they can adapt to whatever the situation is at hand. Like most of these other teams want to win in one way. TCU has won in about every single way conceivable. So great character, great mettle, the ability to overcome adversity. However, from a pure talent standpoint, they remain the most limited team on this list. You get to LSU, I would say the weaknesses are a bit of consistency, just a bit of overall rawness, right? A lot of freshmen still contributing at key areas. While the offense is very good at times, I don't know if anybody would describe this LSU offense as overwhelming. And there have been times when they have not been very good. I'm going to be fascinated what they see going to College Station, who's getting some names back, getting some players off the injury report for the first time this season. Where will this offense be locked in? Are you going to see the offense that you saw against Florida, Ole Miss, Alabama, or is it going to be more of the Auburn, Arkansas offense? That will determine a long way towards how LSU fans are feeling after this week. And make no mistake, this is like LSU needs to win this game. Not just for playoff hopes, because whatever. I mean, I don't really care too much about that. But LSU needs to win this game because this is the last game where people will be pissed if it doesn't go right. We talked about it a bit yesterday because everybody hates Texas A&M. It would be a huge salve on A&M season if they were to get this feather in their cap at the end. Whereas if you win, you get a 10-win regular season, which never happens. And, then you roll into Atlanta looking good, playoff hopes alive, everything. And then whatever. Georgia beats you, whatever. Who cares? You go to a great bowl game. If you beat Georgia, make the playoffs. Awesome. If you lose in the playoff, who cares? You were never supposed to be there in the first place. But you were and are supposed to beat a bad Texas A&M team who, in theory, I don't think this is going to happen, y'all, but in theory, both Mizzou and Vandy could become bowl eligible this weekend. If Mizzou and Vandy were to become bowl eligible, that would make 13 of the 14 SEC teams bowl eligible. The one who would not be would be Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M. So LSU with some kind of vague weaknesses. There's nothing too glaring. I mean, a lack of depth on the interior defensive line, though they've still been really good on that side of the ball. But then you arrive at USC, and this is ultimately why USC is at 6. It's not just resume, but very clearly the defense. The defense is absolutely awful. Now, they force turnovers, but you never have to. It's hard to try to rely on turnovers, but the defense is awful. And I think the playoff committee is fading USC and saying that over the course of these next 2 games, they think that the defense will cost them. We will see. There's maybe one scenario that I could see Alabama sneaking back in, but even that I don't think is very realistic, even with them sitting at 7. I think Clemson is interesting as 8 because a couple losses, and all of a sudden you could have Dabo and the Tigers going back to the playoff once again, though no team ever ranked at number 8 this late into the system has ever ended up making that playoff. So really, I mean, look, I've talked so much playoff hypotheticals that it starts to make my head spin a bit, and it's so hard to try to keep track of the thread when you try to do these things from a conversational standpoint. I think as we are a LSU radio show, a Louisiana radio show here in Baton Rouge, all throughout Louisiana, wherever you're listening here on this penultimate Thanksgiving day, I think the biggest takeaway here, again, is that you almost need to stop, pinch yourself, and appreciate the fact that in Brian Kelly year number 1, November 23rd, 2022, you are ranked number 5 in the country. The number 5 playoff team in the country. That truly borders on the unbelievable, on the absurd, when you look at how you felt that first Sunday night of the season, the most watched game in all of America from college football week 1, over 7 million average viewers watching LSU fall flat on their face in front of Florida State. And now you sit here going to Atlanta, SEC West champs, number 5 in the country. It's been an incredible year.